my friends. At this time, we've come to remember a beloved member of our congregations, Congregation Beth Israel and Houston Congregation for Reform Judaism, a member of our larger community. And as we take our places in the sanctuary, such a familiar place for us to be in times of joy and even in times of sadness such as this, we still sit together in what we would call a strange time. Dispersed as we are, our live stream friends and family who are watching, we take our mask down just briefly, socially distanced and appropriately, to preserve health, our highest priority in Judaism. But when the end of our days do come, we have to gather to find each other's company. With or without hugs, we find in the meaning of our words, our faces, and our feelings exactly what we need to express as we give thanks not only to God for all that we've been given, but also to each other for all that we've celebrated and enjoyed as a circle of family and dearest friends. And so for those who are live streaming with us, thank you for being here in our sanctuary as we continue now with a psalm of consolation, which begins our time of remembering filled with gratitude. I invite cantor trumpeter to share with us Adonai Ro'i, the beautiful words of Psalm 23. from Psalms. O God, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We come and go like grass which in the morning shoots up renewed, and in the evening fades and withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, Return, O mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood where we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. Death has taken our beloved, Gloria Herman. And in a world that is bright and filled with sunshine this day and this season, nevertheless, the world around us has been darkened. And when we think of her, we feel lonelier, we feel sadder. And yet sitting together and knowing that so many others are sharing this time with us, we do feel the beautiful presence of family and friends. God, hear us too, and be with us. For glorious love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever, for her companionship that we shared along life's path, and which continues through the tenderness of memory, for the gifts of her heart and mind that brought us so much joy and happiness, and is now a precious remembrance. For all these and so much more, we give our thanks to God. And let's join together, if we can, in reciting the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's a beautiful proverb in our scriptures, and there are some who claim that it doesn't speak to the modern woman, but it speaks to Gloria Herman. Even at age 96, she was a modern woman, a traditional woman, a woman for our time. Eshet Chayil, we read in Proverbs 31, a woman of valor who can find. She is more precious than fine pearls. Her husband trusts in her, and so he lacks nothing. She does him good, never harm all the days of her life. She perceives that her labor is rewarding. Her candle burns down into the night. She reaches out to those in need and extends her hands to the poor. She is clothed in strength and dignity, and she faces the future cheerfully. She speaks with wisdom. The law of kindness is on her lips. Her children rise up and bless her. Her husband sings her praises. Many daughters have done valiantly, but you excel them all. Gloria was a teacher by nature, and she taught us well. She taught you brilliantly, not only by words, but mostly by deeds. And this reading speaks of her, and I believe how she viewed the world that she walked for so many years and made such a difference in. She would say, life is a gift from God. Never must we cease to thank God for all God's gifts of life, and especially for our precious loved ones whom God has given to us. She would teach, life is an opportunity. Each day of life brings new experiences and special opportunities wherein we may help others and thereby make our own lives a blessing. She would teach, life is an influence. The most significant fact accompanying life is influence. we are continually lifting people up or dragging them down by our influence. And ultimately, we come to know for ourselves, in the hour of our sorrow, we know that the lessons are unto the living. At the entrance of Congregation Beth Israel, words are inscribed on the wall above the main doors. They say, "This is a house of prayer for all people." It's the perfect banner to accompany one like Gloria Herman to her place here. And she also was accompanied by many others. If this were any normal day, a time truly to welcome everyone into the sanctuary to honor her life, she would be met by an honor guard of past presidents of our congregation. I want you to know who they are. I hope that they have time to be listening today. I know that they would be proud to sit here with us to honor her. Rosalind Heiken serves currently as our president of the congregation. Irving Stern is immediate past president. Before him, Bruce Levy, Pat Polikoff, Bobby Lapin, Kevin Lewis, Joe Chesnick Jr., Craig Lieberman, Sheldon Oster, Alan Gover, Stephen Block, Sylvia Wolf, Joyce Chesnick, Barry Margolis, Armin Shapiro, and Arthur Schechter, and all those who came before her. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and dearest friend, Gloria was at her best when she was for all people. Her Judaism resonated in her for all its wisdom, which she applied to every part of her life. Gloria was a woman of remarkable strength and wisdom. She was Phi Beta Kappa at Wesley, where she earned a degree in mathematics. Early in her life, she was an economist at Aero Pencil Company. We would all agree that she had more to do than that, which she made plainly clear in all her life's ambitions, reflected in family, community, and faith. From an early age, she was active, energetic, and on the go. It was the source of the spot-on nickname, Go-Go. Family was central to her, together with her beloved Carl Sr., who preceded her in death. They built a home and family in Houston and delighted in their growth and their choices. Her children, Carl and Randy, Paul and Julie, Lee and Lisa and Ralph, who preceded her in death, were the apples of her eyes. As they grew and found their partners in life, she provided the means for them to thrive. Gloria wasn't a person who lectured them into adulthood. Rather, she modeled for them how to do it well. She had a high IQ that was matched by an equally, if not greater, EQ, or emotional quotient. She was animated by intellectual pursuits, books, music, art, culture, and religious thought. But it wasn't enough to learn it and know it. She loved to apply it with generous doses of experiences she shared with everybody. Her grandchildren and their spouses were her added blessings. Adrian and Eli, Ben and Ashley, Kate, Edward and Sarah, Anne and Reese, Catherine and Michael, Joseph and Madeline, and Helen and David. They saved every birthday card she sent them, handmade and typed, because she didn't want to spend the money on a store-bought card that held less meaning. She also wrote them personally, which made them endearing. She clipped newspaper articles on subjects that interested them. For one grandson who loved basketball, she studied the sport so she could engage in conversations with him. Rather than ice cream with Go-Go, it was articles to read, books to review, and subjects to discuss. Her grandchildren, bright like she was, knew that it was never really about ice cream or newspaper clippings. It was always about love. They took trips together too. Her grandchildren remember well their trips to New York City and Washington, D.C. They could barely keep up with her. She wanted them to know everything about it all and to understand the great roots of our democracy and what it means to our future as a people. You couldn't help but hang on every word. as he tried to keep up with every step. Her great-grandchildren were her extra blessings. Everett and Lillian, Eleanor, Tilda, Ari, and Caleb, and Joseph. How blessed she felt and how much she tried to know them well, too. When her grandchildren were younger and great-grandchildren came, she was ready to help where she could. She didn't ask you to call her if you needed her. She told you when she would be there and gave you a couple choices. And when she arrived, you left the room and she was in charge. She had it in hand and she meant it. It was a model for how to lead, to help, and to make a difference. Outside the family circle, she looked with an observing eye at the circumstances around her. In Houston, where she saw injustice against women, minorities, and children who struggle for equality and for basics like food, housing, and health care, she entered the scene. She wasn't a troublemaker. She was a mitzvah doer, one who responded to her faith's call to action. She was a trailblazer. With friends like Horty Scher of blessed memory, she knew her mind and used her voice. She fundraised for Planned Parenthood. She debated in public forums for zoning in Houston. Her community work was recognized by those who worked side by side with her. And eventually her voice was heard and her actions made a difference. Gloria Herman was the first woman to be president of Congregation Beth Israel from 1985 to 1987. It was a proud moment for her. In recent years, she told me about the challenges she faced as president. She laughed a little bit in her inimitable way when she spoke about the debate she moderated over the old Boy Scout house in the back of the temple property. Before the Kaufman building, which is Schlenker School, there stood a dilapidated house that once served a purpose, but now it didn't. Glory thought it was a small issue, but few issues around temple politics are ever small. Nonetheless, the house was removed, and Gloria remained an active leader and formidable presence. For years of service and obvious leadership, she was awarded the first Samuel E. Karff Leadership Award in 1989. And as we know, we'll gather in a couple of days to mourn his death too. But as they admired each other so meaningfully and for all the right reasons, I'm touched by the juxtaposition of our time today and the time we'll spend in a couple of more days. Inscribed on that award that she received are in fact the words of Proverbs 31. It hung over her dresser at home to remind her that she was every day an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. One of her abiding strengths that never diminished was her unique ability to connect with people, all people. When she stopped driving a car and she learned all about Uber, she found her way around again. But unlike you or me, who would easily get in the back seat and mind our own business, she took her place in the front passenger seat without question. She thought that Uber was a remarkable invention, and what an opportunity to learn about new people and their lives, which was a bonus for the trip. I have no doubt that she had a 5+ rating on Uber. Likewise, the story is told about the time that she took the megabus from Baltimore to Philadelphia. While she waited for the bus, her granddaughter insisted on standing with her. But Gloria was not interested in being waiting on, as she might have described it, or babysat, God forbid. At the end of her trip, when she departed the bus, everyone waved and said goodbye to Gloria. She was a rare individual who made an immediate impact on everyone she met. All her life, Gloria was intentional about everything she knew she had to do and how to have some fun at the same time. One of her grandchildren said to me that she could be a rascal. And from notes from her family, I'd like to share with you a couple of bullet points about her rascally nature. She taste tested salsa with a spoon at a restaurant and nodded her approval. Most of us take a chip. Her home was a haven of treats including jelly beans, pickle-flavored carrots, and oat squares. Apparently they made an impression. Social distancing didn't sit well with her. She would say, "I miss kissing people's faces." So do we. She had pizza in New York to meet Eli, and when he refused a beer with his pizza, she never let him live it down. It's just not how pizza is done. And when Ed learned how to fish with his Snoopy fishing rod, the first catch startled him. He dropped the whole thing in the water, but Gogo jumped in and saved the pole too. And sometimes, well, just between us and those who are watching, she packed her own vodka in old peanut butter jars when she traveled. It's okay to tell it now. On her 90th birthday, the whole family came together to celebrate her milestone. But it wasn't just a birthday party with cake and presents. She arranged it so that everyone was responsible for researching a subject of interest: geography, inventions, history, literature, and so much more. And then everyone had to present their findings in a clever way. It's a good thing everyone loved her, because most people come for cake and presents. But this excited her. This aroused her mind and heart to see how her family saw the world and shared their views. What's more, she had a loving but ulterior motive. With every gathering of family, she was building relationships she hoped would last long after she was gone, and was something to talk about between them. Brilliant. Gloria had many interests, including baseball. She was a die-hard Astros fan. After she listened to your questions and took interest in what you had to say, she also hoped that you saw a game. She wasn't a baseball player, but she was a fine athlete. She excelled on the tennis court and on the golf course. With friends and family, she held her own and enjoyed the competition. She especially enjoyed friends who shared her enthusiasm for topical conversation and current events and strategic games like bridge and poker. If her mind was active, then she was energized. As Gloria aged, she didn't really slow down. Her daily walks and activities kept her mind and body in good form. She was well known for leaving for a walk and coming home with hands full of fruit she picked along the way. There was nothing illegal about picking fruit that hung over the sidewalk or even into your own yard. Even about fruit, she knew her rights. When Gloria relied more on a walker and Uber to get around, she was still fiercely independent. One evening here, after a worship committee meeting, we all began to make our way down the hallway towards the exit. And when I offered to assist her, she waved me off with a friendly hand and "Thanks anyway," she said, and continued on her way. In our worship committee meetings, you should know, she spoke articulately, with critique, but not criticism. She looked forward to the worship even as it transformed in front of her, sometimes speaking of the heaviness of the Yom Kippur book, but understanding what it was her responsibility to do and how to pray. She loved the music that we sang. She loved the stirring presence of people in the sanctuary. And when she couldn't be here, she live streamed, and when she couldn't visit personally, thankfully FaceTime and other means allowed her to connect. Gloria Herman, a woman of indomitable strength and conviction, a woman of nourishing love and affection for all, could have been in any other time the president of IBM, it's been said. That's just one's way of saying that Gloria could have been anything she had the opportunity to be. To her credit, her only unfinished business was not voting on November 3rd. And her only regret was not seeing her newest great-grandchild. After 96 years, it is difficult for us to be only sad today unless we didn't take the time to know her better. It's easier to be glad because we did know her well, and she had the privilege to lead her life as she chose to live it. The family said that to love Gogo was a privilege, and to love her back was an honor. Rabbi Jacob Rudin taught, when we die, and people weep for us and grieve, let it be because we touch their lives with beauty and simplicity. Let it not be said that life was good to us, but rather that we were good to life. Indeed, Gloria led herself and held herself to the highest standards. She would be pleased to know that by all measures and every accounting, she made a difference with the years she was given and the days she was blessed to share with us and with so many others. Gloria's heart was a place for all people. Her hands reached out to help and hold all people. Her words spoke for all people. Her eyes saw all people as children of God, and her smile welcomed all people into her world, a house for all people to live and be loved. Zichrona livracha, may the memory of our beloved Gloria Herman, Gogo, be a source of strength and blessing to us now and always. Amen. There are so many ways to remember Gloria, and I'm so pleased that today I can invite her son Carl to share some words about her as he remembers her on behalf of the family. Carl, you'll use this microphone here.
Thank you, Rabbi. This is hard for many reasons, not the least of which is I believe she's still comparing me to her father. Thank you. Thank you to Beth Israel for our enabling our family to grieve and remember together today. Thanks to Cantor Trumpeter for your beautiful music. Cantor, when my mother and I watched the streaming Shabbat in the last few months, almost every Friday, she would tell me it was for the prayers and the rabbi's sermon, but I could see in her face that it was at least as much the music and your voice that drew her. My mother loved music. You made her very happy every Friday. And thank you to Rabbi Gross and Rabbi Lyon for your words and your constant support, always for years, especially in the last few days, but really for the last 30 years or so. As Rabbi Lyon mentioned, and as many of you know, Rabbi Karf passed away in the same 24 hours as my mother. That did feel very poignant to me. My father was president in '76 when Rabbi Karf came here, so Mom, Joan, and Sam knew each other from day one. They were real friends. They had mutual admiration for each other. Sam and my mother even played tennis together. And as Rabbi Lyon, and coincidentally Rabbi Stahl, said, quote, "We lost two pillars of our community this day." Pillars is a particularly appropriate word for Mom. She supported everything she touched. Her extended family, her friends, her community. I'm her son, so I have a wonderful but limited perspective on Mom. But that perspective has been widened considerably in the last few days. Lee, Paul, and I, thankfully, were at Mom's side when she passed away Friday. We left the hospital Friday evening burdened with grief and very sad that she was gone. But we woke up Saturday morning overwhelmed with emotion by the notes and comments from all over the place, how Mom had made a difference in people's lives. Most of them were from people very close to Mom, but some were from people that she'd only met a couple of times, or maybe 20 years ago. It's not surprising, but it is wonderful that her 8 grandchildren, spread out from Brooklyn to Portland, spent the hours after she passed, engaged with each other in a group text sharing stories about her. Like Helen and Kate, talking about how frightening it was at times to be in her car with her. All of them, as Rabbi said, posting various incarnations of her famous oat squares recipe. That generation has come to call that Herman Crack. Or Ed's story about catching his first fish in Galveston. I'll add to what Rabbi Lyon said. Mom was BOI, and she loved that she was from Galveston, and she loved fishing. So what Rabbi didn't say is that the pole that she bought was the cheapest pole she could possibly find. But she jumped in after it anyway. I assume she jumped in after the pole, not the fish. And when she rode the megabus from Baltimore to Philadelphia and got off the bus, Ben was there waiting for her and could not believe it when almost everyone that got off the bus said, "Goodbye, Gloria. Goodbye, Gloria. Goodbye, Gloria." That was Gloria. As anyone who knew Mom would know, her life was not without challenges. But she was never one to complain, never, never. Catherine tells another story about the 2 days or so when she was pushing a baby stroller in Baltimore, getting on an airplane, flying home, and a couple of days later deciding to go to the doctor to find that she'd broken her collarbone. She never complained. The collarbone was minor. My dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 1979. The next 12 years before my dad died, our mother's days, all of them, were about taking care of my dad. It was really hard on her as the disease progressed. And in the late 80s, my brother Ralph was diagnosed with AIDS. Dad and Ralph both died in 91, along with their own parents, my aunt and a dear friend. That was a devastating, depressing time, but that's not the lesson about Mom. As hard as that was for Mom, she didn't allow herself to give in to the sorrow. Rather, she used her experience to support others through similar hardships. She became heavily involved with Alzheimer's Association, Crisis Intervention, and other organizations. My mother meant a lot of things to a lot of people. As Adrian said last night, she was always proud to have a strong, courageous grandmother, but has recently come to appreciate that all of that came from love. We don't usually talk about strength and courage in the connection of love, context of love, but in Gogo's case, that's where it belongs. It fits. To quote Adrian, Gogo was pretty much the total package when it came to being a role model. And Gogo was a role model for all her children, our children, and now their children. My 8-year-old granddaughter, Eleanor Gloria Herman, who was also very sad, said, "I don't want to not have Gogo in our family anymore." But Gogo will always be in our family because, as Kate put it, he will always keep learning from Gogo. Or as our tradition says, she still lives on earth in the acts of goodness she performed and in the hearts of those who cherish her memory. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being here. I hope we can celebrate Mom's life together soon, as they say, not next year in Jerusalem, maybe next year in Galveston.
Sky blue. Sky blue is the term that is used in hopscotch. It is shouted with joy and elation as a player reaches the apex of this schoolyard game of hopping and jumping. At Sky Blue, the participants land solidly on both feet, and then they yell, "Sky Blue!" and then jump 180 degrees and pause to navigate a pathway back home. That's Sky Blue. But Sky Blue had special meaning to Gloria. Sky Blue for Gloria was a concept for Shabbat. She believed that Shabbat represented a weekly stopping point on a journey in life. She shared this idea with me after a sermon during an oneg many years ago, and I have never forgotten the idea of Sky Blue. She said that for her, Shabbat was a kind of stopping point every single week, a point that offered a moment of celebration and perspective, a point to consider where we have been, and a point to navigate where to go next. This profound schoolyard theology was how Gloria Herman bounced throughout her life. Many knew her as Go-Go, and that was because she was always on the go. As was already shared this afternoon, she invested her time and her spirit in so many aspects of life, as a leader, as a woman, as a mother, as a grandmother. And yet, for Gloria, life was as much about the journey itself as it was about the destination. As full as her life may have been, as busy as she kept herself throughout her 96 years, Gloria made sure that she cherished every hop, every skip, and every jump along the way. Gloria never passed up an opportunity for a meaningful conversation. She liked to ask questions. She tried very hard to be present and listen to every idea that you had to share. She remained engaged. She kept you engaged. And she tried to learn from others before asserting her own wisdom and her strong opinions. Gloria never passed up an opportunity to celebrate with her family. Even in her 90s, Gloria would continue to travel all over the country to try to celebrate with everyone for weddings and for the arrival of new grandchildren. Gloria never missed birthdays. She sent those handwritten, hand-typed personal birthday cards to her grandchildren and her nieces and her nephews, to her children. They were always there, and each of you will continue to have those to cherish for the years to come. These moments and so many more like them were moments that Gloria would silently shout within her heart, "Sky Blue," as she would take time to reflect on where the journey had taken her so far. And as she did, she would pause to navigate where that journey would go next. As we celebrate Gloria's beautiful, full life today, we can take comfort in the fact that Gloria Herman, after this journey, long in breadth and long in length, has taught all who knew her the value and the meaning of Sky Blue.
So much to remember and to think about Let's take a moment for silent prayer so that we can collect our own thoughts and memories of our beloved.
Shalom Ra Israel Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Ra Israel Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech Adon Shalom, ki ata melech Adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. B'tov b'necha levarich et amcha Yisrael. B'chol lit u'b'chol sha'ar b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim
May the memory of our beloved Gloria Herman endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God. Please rise.
El mal rachamim shochin bamromim hametzim menocha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina im kroshim odorim kizor harakia mazirim et nishmat Gloria Herman shalcha leolama. Bal harachamim yastirei beseter knafav leolamim. Bitzror hachayim en nishmata. Adonai hu nachalata. V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved Gloria Herman, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
In a moment, we'll recite the words of Kaddish, not a prayer about death or sorrow or salvation, but rather praise to God. We've been taught that even though in this large universe we may come to feel insignificant, the Kaddish reminds us that we are constantly linked to the one who is our creator, our help, our comfort, and in that relationship we are never insignificant. And thanks to God for the gift of Gloria's life, we say, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrachu te v'amlich malchute, v'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayedechol Beit Yisrael, v'galav v'zman kariv imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shmei Gudisha brichu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, dameram b'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'momav, Hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. May the one who causes peace to reign in the high heavens cause peace to reign upon each of us. Before we make our way from this sanctuary, this house for all people, a house that Gloria led and worshiped in and found nourishment from, we leave with words from Rabbi Morris Adler. He writes, "Those I have loved, though now beyond my view, have given form and quality to my being, and they live on unfailingly feeding my heart and mind and imagination. They led me into the wide universe I continue to inhabit, and their presence is more vital to me than their absence. What thou givest, O Lord, thou takest not away, and bounties once granted shed their radiance evermore." I pray that memories of our beloved will go with us from this place to continue to keep us focused on what matters most in our life. For Gloria, it was family, it was friends, it was for building a world filled with greater peace. Let it be remembered for good and for blessing. Amen. This concludes our service.